So we have been on this journey over the last few years of trying to make a shift from being sort of a multiracial or multicultural congregation into sort of a more anti-racist way of being. And so as that journey continues, we have realized, both in the anti-racism team and now beyond, that worship is a place that we want and need to look at. Again, through that lens of anti-racism, look at how we worship, who is included, who is excluded, how people feel in worship. And so we're excited because we have had this opportunity to apply for a grant from the Calvin Institute for Christian Worship. And so we have put in our application, and we don't know yet if we have received the grant, but we are using this time to help the congregation understand and there's a lot of the work that we have planned that we can do whether we get a grant or not. But if we do get a grant, we'll have more resources to do it.
Yeah, this past January we applied for a grant from the Calvin Institute of Christian Worship, and the grant we applied for was the Vital Worship Grant. And Calvin Institute itself doesn't have, strict guidelines as to, this grant can only be used for X, Y, Z. It really leaves it up to an institution to kind of decide for itself how this grant can help its worship experience. Mm-hmm. And so as a community, we sat down and we talked, as a staff, figuring out, okay, we've been on this being an anti-racist institution journey. We have pinpointed worship as the place where we want to put our focus in at the moment. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to find some resources to help ourselves as a staff and the community better understand, what we can do to make that space more meaningful for people. And so the objectives that we came with were, we want to make sure that we are with this grant focus is create a space for our congregation, for people in our congregation, or those who won't be there or are coming to it, to find worship, the practice of worship, more meaningful. That can mean many different things. But as we know, we are currently a predominantly white church, highly liturgical. And so this isn't about changing the style of worship or changing the music of worship or including different things. This is about how, when people enter into that space and join together for worship, how can we make it more meaningful while they're there? In addition is how do we incorporate new elements that are not currently a part of our own particular practice? That can be many different things. And so these aren't, we're not doing this by ourselves. It isn't going to be a journey that it's just going to be you and I and the anti-racism team saying, here's the things that need to be changed. This is the way they're going to change. Let's everybody, get on board. This is a process, right? And so the objective is, as you are looking for new ways to worship, new ways to incorporate things of worship into Central, it's also about an identity shift, a shift that helps us with what it is to be an anti-racist institution.
Yeah, I think one of the powerful experiences that we had within the anti-racism transformation team was for those of us who are white and who sort of grew up in this kind of worship experience, to realize that for at least some of the people of color, to come to this church, they give up a lot, right? That people come for the values, for the mission, for the community, for the relationships, but in terms of the worship practices, there may be more of a disconnect. And so for me, that's really important, because yes, we are a majority white congregation, but we are not an all white congregation. And so everybody who is part of this community, I hope, can connect with worship. None of us will connect with everything in a way that is meaningful to us, but that nobody should be excluded. So that, for me, I think is a real motivation, and I think it also kind of builds on the strong relationships we have here in this congregation. I don't think any of us want for others who we're sitting in worship with to feel either excluded or disconnected. And so it's not a question, like you said, of throwing things out and bringing in something new, but it is important, I think, for us to listen to one another and really look for ways to be affirming and inclusive of the people who are part of our congregation now, as well as for those who may come down the line.
Yeah. So in preparation for this grant and thinking about it, it's a year-long grant. If it's accepted, we'll know by June this year, and we'll be awarded the monies that are connected with it. And the starting of it will happen this summer. So it'll start from July to June of next year, or June to June. It's a 1-year project. And one of the things that we wanted to help the grant Calvin Institute for Christian Worship understand is there are things that we are doing in preparation to receive this grant, whether we get it or not. And so we kind of broke it down into 4 parts, right? And the 4 parts that we broke it down is to get ready. And so in getting ready, the Antiracism and Transformation team is taking a 5-week course with Crossroads, dealing with identity, and also towards the class called Towards Liberation. And so it's about 25 hours of work that 6 of us are going through on a weekly basis, and we meet once a week where we process the information and learning. And so that is helping us in preparation for this coming summer. In addition, there's a team working side by side with us, an implementation team that is developing ways for us as an anti-racism team and transformation team to connect with the church. How do we communicate what this process looks like? Individuals and groups that we will be engaging during this particular process.
And during these months, which is really going to be like March, April, May, we want to listen a lot to each other.
Correct.
So we want to have some one-on-one conversations with members of the congregation, and then also have some group conversations. If people who've been around Central a little bit longer may remember doing circles of inquiry, which are group conversations designed to listen to each other, to listen to experiences, thoughts, feelings, without having to come to any conclusion or decision at the end. So during the spring, we'll be making those opportunities available in early summer.
Yeah. And then hopefully what we glean from the listening groups and the times that we are together, we'll spend the late part of summer into fall reflecting and sharing what we've learned. And so that is, it isn't just listening, it's hearing, responding to what members and our community are talking about. And then the hope coming into the end of that year and start of 2024 is bringing in voices to help us during this particular process. And so we have connected ourselves to about 3 persons outside of Central who work in the field of worship, who work in the field of liturgical, choir music, all those kinds of things. And the first person we hope when they're with us will help us as staff and the church engage each other in a different way during worship. It's
would you say like more interactive, more participatory?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think the way worship is now, it's almost inclusive language that when you get there, you know exactly what to do, right? So it isn't as if you have a bulletin and you get up, you sit down when you're able, you follow kind of a strategic or kind of a linear thought, set pattern. And so this individual works within this pattern, but helps in helping the community engage and the leaders engage with the community differently in those spaces. Going back to how do we, engage each other differently in worship.
I know another of the resource people that we hope to bring in is really special, is a choral director, as well as a professor of music and choral music, who has done a lot of work in the area of social justice and music, and hopefully, again, can help us sort of with some knowledge, but also experience in choral music. And when saying that, it's not just the choir, but congregation, congregational singing. We have a pretty good singing congregation, but again, it's a given sort of style, and we just kind of want to expand our experience with some of these other resources. And then the final one that we're hoping will join us toward probably early 2024 and into the spring is we'll really work with the staff and the worship team primarily on the planning of worship. So as you know, we have kind of our current process for planning, and that's led by staff. It certainly includes others sometimes of the year, but we just want to look at that and try something a little different that, again, will help us sort of access more of the experience and the gifts and the voices of, more of our congregation.
Yeah, and if I recall, one of the strong reasons for that person helping us is, once you do something new, and you're establishing something new, you have to find ways to how to maintain and keep that trajectory moving forward. And I do look forward to seeing how we incorporate these practices, for change, and adding, going into different wells for us to pull from for resources, I think is something that is exciting. I don't know about you, but I think just like when we were writing this, when we were planning these things, I got really excited about the possibilities that can happen. And I hope by us talking about it a little bit more, people can see our excitement about the possibilities of change that can occur, with this grant proposal. So,
and I think at the same time, we're human, and change can be a little bit scary, because we're not sure what the new thing is going to look like, and we're not sure kind of what our place is going to be in the new thing. So we want to acknowledge that too, right? That this isn't, it's not easy for people or institutions to change, but we really think that we're going to come out of it with sort of a richer experience, and also deeper relationships with one another. So for me, I think that's part of the excitement of it.
And our church does have a history of making change. Some are larger than others. I think in our conversations we talked about the communion. We went towards using gluten-free because there was a member of the church who had severe, allergy towards that.
Right.
And now it's a part of our community, and there really isn't any questions asked as to why we're using, we're using this. Where if you can make change for that one person, it incorporates and makes them feel much different. Like, my community hears me, my community sees me. And I think there was other times the church has done that, open and affirming.
Yeah, I think, there was a day when people in the LGBTQ community did not feel like they were part of this community. That's been a few decades by now. But, Central had to change some of what it did in order to be welcoming to people who were now members of the community. So we have history that we can build on as we continue this journey of anti-racism.
Well, if there's any questions that you personally have about our Vital Worship Grant with the Calvin Institute for Christian Worship, we invite you to connect with Pastor Linda and myself, or someone who's on the Anti-Racism Transformation team, to kind of talk to you about our process. We are, part of being an anti-racist institution is to be as open as possible in the things that we do. And so we look forward for all of you to join us in this process and to see where God takes us.